Hey, welcome back to the Seats to Streets podcast. It's the same people here. I'm still J.R. Horn. Last time I checked, he's still Brian Gorman. That's what the cool these things say right here. And we're glad you are with us. Today, we are still going through our series of the 5 questions a healthy church can answer. What does that look like? When we look at healthy churches, when we look at churches that are thriving, that are healthy, that are moving people from Sunday morning seats to local and global streets. If you ever wondered why our name is called Seats to Streets, it's because of that. That's what we strive to do, is to help you mobilize your people from Sunday morning seats to local and global streets. A church that is doing this, a healthy church that is doing this. Notice that we didn't use attendance numbers, by the way. And we've noticed that a healthy church can answer 5 specific questions. Now, if you haven't, go back to last week's episode where we started off with the first question that a healthy church can answer. This week, we're going to go to question number 2. And question number 2, Brian, is what do we do? You're sitting there, someone comes up, they're new for the first time, and they look at you and say, hey, it's our first time here at the church. What do you all do? They're asking a very specific question. And the answer actually reveals what level of health your church is at. Now, we call them here, when we come into coach, we call them our 5 core statements. These are our 5 core statements or 5 core questions a church can answer, not should answer. No, you are a healthy church when you can answer these 5 core statements. So, Brian, today is what do we do? What do you got?
Yeah. So, it's going to sound like a semantics thing, but it's an important semantics thing. Oftentimes, when you say, what do you do? Individuals start moving to specific actions. We do worship. We do studies. We do, fun concerts. We do these are the activities we're involved in. But when we use this phrase, what do we do? It's not based on that. The question is, if we know who we are, right? This is where I stand. What is it that then moves me and motivates me from where I stand? It's the primary motivator and action behind everything that we do. This is still a very, very high level in its understanding. So we talked about last time taking all of the things that you do, the behaviors, the actions, the specifics, and kind of drilling down to these 5 whys, so you can say, this is ultimately who we are. The question then is, if that's who you are, what is the one thing that you are all about from that point on? I know this sounds a little strange to try to get it to one thing, but it is. What you're going to do here is you're going to keep coming back to, if we are, fill in the blank. If you are a group of fellow, similar-minded believers, which isn't a great statement by any means, but if that is who you are, right, what do you do with that? Right. At my church, we say we are a place for everyone. Well, what does this place for everyone do?
Right.
What's the one specific thing? I'm going to give you a personal one for me, and then I'll show you how it works in church world. This is not a phrase that I used for myself. It's a phrase that someone else used for me that really resonated with me personally, and I've kind of used it ever since. The statement was, you are a skeptic who is trying to reach skeptics. And that's a really accurate state for me. I'm a skeptic in the way that I see things. I'm always questioning and have this deep kind of curiosity. I don't believe things easily. So I'm a skeptic who has come to terms and grips with the truth of who Jesus is. So I want to reach skeptics for Jesus. How do I do that? Right? What do I do with that identity of a skeptic? Is I coach. And I've just learned this as I look back at my life. And I realized that everywhere I go, I end up coaching. I don't know how to not be that. This is the behavior. Right. This is the what I do. Now, how did I get to that conclusion? I got to that conclusion using a very similar set of practices to what we mentioned last time. Is I kind of looked at everything I did and went, what is the thread and the theme that runs through all of that, right? And I started noticing, no matter where I went, no matter what it was I was doing, I was coaching in that environment, whether it was
Right.
coaching soccer, whether it was involved in the kickboxing that I get involved in, whether it's talking about how we function in churches, whether it's working with an individual who's trying to come to know Jesus more, that in everything I did, it was very much built around, like, I would coach them in that. I wasn't going to do it
Mhm.
for them, but I would coach them in it. And I just found that to be a truth for me.
Mhm.
As a church, we kind of did the same thing, that we looked at everything we did and we said, these are all the things that we do. These are especially the things that we're proud that we do.
Mhm.
Because we all have our things that we do that we're like, yeah, pretend that's not happening. But
Right.
these are the things we're really proud of. Why are we proud of them? And what we learned for us is everything that we did that we were proud of was movement based.
Hmm.
It always took someone from here to there, and specifically it took them from one part of a relationship with Jesus to another part of relationship to Jesus. So
Hmm.
for our church, what we've realized is what we do is we meet people where they are and we move them closer to Jesus. Now, I've
Mhm.
shared that with a few churches, like, oh, that's really good. I'm like, wait, slow down a little bit here.
Took you years to get there, huh?
Do the people in your it took us a lot of time. In fact, I'll tell you that in a second. It took us a lot of time to get there. But what I will ask people quite often is, show me how you meet people where they are.
Mhm.
Where is your staff involved in the community that's not connected to your church? Where are your people consistently involved in others' lives that are far from God? And where are you involved in people who are close to God but want to move closer? Show me how you meet them. And now show me how you move them, right? And how did that get them closer to Jesus? Now, I'm not knocking any church that does this. I'm just using this as
Right.
an example. I've seen churches use this phrase after I've talked to them, like they start using this phrase, meet people that are moving closer to Jesus. But when you look at their activities begin to be a little bit more come and see
Right.
the thing that we're doing for you, right? We're going to do this big fair. We're going to do this big food drive. We're going to do this big event. And those, I'm not knocking any of those. But
Right.
but you're not meeting people where they are. You're actually expecting them to come to you,
Right.
right? So the phrase doesn't actually work for you. You're not moving them closer to Jesus. You might be showing them the love of Jesus, but you're not actually moving them. So you wouldn't want to use a phrase like what we would use, meet people where they are, move
Right.
them closer to Jesus, because it isn't accurate to you. And that's okay.
Right.
I'm going to go to this phrase a lot of times. You're going to hear it from me multiple times. Something my soccer coach used to teach me in high school, and that is, if there are two of you in the same place on the field, I don't need one of you.
Exactly.
Right? We don't all need to be the same and have the same goals. I know some churches that what they do is they strengthen the faith of those who believe.
Hmm.
Great. Do that well, right? Do that well. I know other churches that they may not word it this way, but I know other churches that surround Christians with safety and security in their faith.
Right.
If that's what they're about, that's what they're about. I know some churches that what they do is they teach the truths of the Bible.
Mhm.
Cool, right? Are they going to be a big movement type of church? Probably not. Are they going to be a discipleship church? Maybe not, but they're going to be smart and be
Right.
well educated. And it's valuable sometimes to look and go, this is what I do. You may want to ask the question, do I like what I do? Uh,
Right.
is that who I want to be? But what you're going to find is, if you take that same list we put together last time of all of the things that you do, and you
Mhm.
take only the things that you're really proud of, and you begin to ask those whys. Why are we proud of this? Why are we
Right.
glad this is part of our church? You'll begin to see some themes over time. You'll hear some words and some phrases, and you begin to take those. What I would do in that setting if I were you, we have our same group of people we talked about meeting with last time.
Ooh, which is already
We
scary.
have right, it is. We have a big whiteboard or a nice piece of paper that everybody can see. And when someone uses a word or a phrase, like, ooh, yeah, we'll write that word or phrase down. Someone uses a key idea. Ooh, good. And we write that key
Mhm.
idea down. What you're really doing is what you've probably heard us use the phrase before, keep, kill, combine. That's
Mhm.
really what you're doing, is you're just driving deeper to the core, and it always comes from those 5 whys. Why are we proud of it? What is it about that makes us proud? But so why did we do it? At the end of the day, what is it that we get excited about in relation
Right.
to that? in our church, again, our church, I'm not saying right or wrong, just my church as an example. If you put on a great event and you can't show that people were moved closer to Jesus, it's not a great event for us.
Yeah.
It actually worked in opposition to who we are, right? This goes back to that identity conversation, who we are.
Right.
So if I'm in an environment and I find that I'm there for too long and I'm not, if there's an area where I could be coaching and helping develop people and I'm not doing it, I find I don't stay in it very often because it's
Right.
just not, well, it's not for who I am.
Right.
And that's cool. It's not the place for me, and that's fine. But once you know who you are and what you do, everything else we're going to talk about stems from those things.
Right.
But who you are and what you do, now you can begin to go, well, how do we do it? What are the specifics of it? Who are we doing it for? Some of these other key questions that would come into play. But always start with, you start the first week, everything you do, 5 whys, get down to, well, why do we do them? Who are we? Now we're really proud of these things. Why are we proud of those things? You ask those 5 whys again. Now you'll get to, this is what we do with who we are. It sounds simple. Admittedly, I'm going to tell you it's not. It, again, as we talked about before, will take 6 to 12 months to do well.
Right.
To really get to that. Here's how we came upon this. And I'm just going to tell you that this is the truth about how we got there. I use a lot of phrases. I have a lot of catchphrases in my normal teaching. Meet people. Years ago, a phrase I would use quite often was meet people where they are, move them closer to Jesus.
Let's see. What else do I remember? Play around. Let's play around in reality. Dark Brian says.
Yeah. Fallen broken world is in there a lot.
Fallen broken world, ambassadors of Jesus.
Yeah. So I have these catchphrases I use a lot. I don't think about them. They're just phrases I use. So if I'm using this, I started using this phrase, meet people that are moving closer to Jesus. That's what we want to do. There wasn't intentionality to that phrase. I was just saying it. And after a while, I started having people come up to me, and as we'd be talking about the church, and they'd be like, man, that's what we do, man. We meet people where they are, and we move them closer to Jesus. Like, that's a really good phrase. Where'd you get that? And they're like, yeah, you said that. I don't remember saying that, but
it's one of the positive moments when someone comes up and says, Brian, I heard you say.
I've had a lot of the negative side of that, but that's what they started saying. And so for us, how we got to that was it just became such a common vernacular of the church. It's something that people were just saying. And we went, that is true for us. Yeah. We just realized it was true. It was just a phrase that I was saying, but it turned out to be a truth that our church really ingrained and internalized, because as we talked about with the who you are, when you begin to get these 5 questions answered, you'll find they're not logical anymore. They're emotionally true. They're charged, because when you say the phrase that really permeates with your church, not one that everybody goes, ooh, that's so cool, but one that permeates with your church will feel it. Like, yes, that's what we do. They'll almost become defensive about it. And that's one of the ways you want to test this out. You want to start throwing some of these different phrases. Let's say your team that you work with here is able to get you to maybe 5, 6 kind of phrases and ideas that you think were kind of in this vein. Preacher, start using them in sermons once in a while and just watch the faces. See when faces light up, right? Because it's not a matter of you being brilliant and bringing this great phrase down from the mountaintop with your face glowing, right? It's a thing of you're trying to find the thing that really touches the heart and the mind and the lives of your people. You start throwing these phrases out, seeing which one sticks, and you'll discover what your church internalizes by what they grab a hold of and cling to as they move forward. So I'm telling you that in part to take the pressure off of you, preacher. You don't have to be the smart one here. You just have to be the one that puts it out there and find out what really connects with your people. We had a different phrase for a long time as a church. I just kept saying, meet people that are moving closer to Jesus. And before long, we just kind of went, I guess we make that official, because everybody was saying it anyway. It was true. Let's just go with it.
It is. And again, if you were on last time, if you haven't, go back and listen. Our heart is to make sure that you and your church become healthy, is that you succeed in what you are doing. When you win, we win. Like, we're not coming in as the heroes. We want to make sure you're a part of that conversation with those high capacity leaders and staff and elders, whoever you have in the room, as a participant, to be able to have equal playing ground. Because sometimes when the lead guy stands up to lead all these conversations, there's a lot of animosity and pushback because, well, I guess we have to agree because it's what he wants to do or what she wants to do. No. This is what God wants us to do. And it's funny, Brian, you're using some of these phrases that there's so much behind them, that not just the what we do and the people that are going to be there and all that. I mean, there's so many other key points that these 5 questions hit on that it really does create the core of your church. We actually call them the core statements, the 5 core statements. And one of the churches here in Louisville that I coach, I've been having conversations with the lead minister regularly about these conversations, about these statements. And I was sitting with him the other day, and he rattled off a phrase, and I went, "He's got it." He rattled off the phrase, "Well, it's Labor Day weekend. The people that we really want to reach aren't going to be there." And I went, "Dude, you got it. Yes. Especially if you're a movement-based church, if you're an outward-focused based church of sending your people out, as well as having a quality place for them to bring them to. Yes. You have an understanding of the people
Labor
you
Day
want to
for us.
reach. Not going to be
Labor
there.
Day for us this weekend, this year, is going to be a very personal, intimate conversation with the church, because we know most of the people are going to be there, are going to be kind of more of that core committed group. We use that intentionally. Labor Day, Memorial Day, some of those days to go, hey, we know we've got some of our more committed people here in general. Can we talk about something that's kind of an internal conversation? So next week we can go back to the people that we're really more wired to reach generally, but we need you on board because this is who we are. So
oftentimes if we wanted to link this statement, and again, we're not trying to come in and go, hey, you need all these different statements. No, these are the statements that a church would normally have in place. We're trying to help you put some intentionality behind it, and to have you have a understanding of what the reality is, not the hoped for and the desired. We want the reality of this statement. Right. The vision is something that is way long off, something that is a destination way out. It's a hope for and a perceived thing. We're trying to help you get the reality. It's why we're asking you to write down what you do, like write things out. That's what you do. So oftentimes in church world, we would refer to this as your mission or your mission statement. Like this is what we are doing. This is what the troops are going out to do. So it is your mission, right? So here at Seats to Streets, our mission is this: we help churches create committed, growing disciple makers. That's it. That is our mission. That's what wakes us up out of bed every morning. We help churches create committed, growing disciple makers. Yeah, I've got a friend here in Louisville that works for UPS, and when someone asks, oftentimes when you're at a cookout or wherever you're at a barbecue, and if you've been a stranger to the channel, Brian and I love barbecue, and I'm kind of his Padawan, or whatever the Star Trek people call that underling. Jeff's gonna shoot me for that one.
You're an awful big youngling.
I'm awful big youngling. But I'm serving under the tutelage of the great Brian Gorman when it comes to smoking meat on an ugly drum smoker. So this weekend is the maiden voyage of my first ugly drum smoker. And what I found out is that there is an absolute learning process. But when you're at a cookout and someone walks up and says, "What do you do?" Brian, we often get that question wrong. I work at UPS. Oh, okay. And that's what my friend was disgruntled about. Is like when they ask that question, they want to know what job do I have?
Right.
Why am I not more than my job? And I went, hoo, we can, yes, let's play.
Yes.
Let's have some fun with that. Because it really is. It is your mission as a church. And like Brian said, it could be an outward focused, movement based. It could be something where you are strengthening the hurting and those that have been hurt from church hurt from the past. So anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So think about that as a church, right? Hey, what are you? You're a church. Well, there's a lot of churches. Like there's no excitement about that. I work for UPS. There's a lot of churches. I passed a ton of them. Right. But to be able to say, oh man, we're a place for everyone that meets people where they are and moves them closer to Jesus. Well, I want to be a part of that. I'm in for that. Giving them, that's why that identity kind of statement, this identity and mission is so key, because it's more than just saying I work for UPS. I have a church.
Yeah. So
don't you want something more?
As we end, I want I want to play around a little bit. Brian doesn't know. I've got a few quotes from a different. It was an article online from several years ago, then about mission statements for churches, and I just wanted to. I just want to get Brian's blind reaction to a few quotes from this. So I don't know what he's going to
Okay.
say. I have perceived knowledge of what he might have, but I just quick fire, rapid fire. Let's just have a 2 minutes of fun. Let me let our audience go. So
Go for
here's the first one. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's displayed on the bottom here, but I'll read the quotes for you. It says, "Big churches need bold mission statements. Small churches, not so much."
it. Depends on if you want your church to live or to die. I mean, the reality is, I know some really, really big guys who are exceptionally unhealthy, and I know some really, really big churches that are actually just cancerous. The reality is, I don't care if you're big or if you're small, you need to be focused, because
Yep.
you have a call for the kingdom, and the more you know who you are, and the more bold that is, man. But bold, I don't like the word bold. They don't need bold; they need clear.
There's some clear bias or past
Yeah,
unhealth that's taken place that's gone into that. So here's a two-part. It'll be two banners that show up on the bottom. If a small church has a mission statement, it's probably because a church growth expert said they needed one.
I
But
agree with that statement.
it's unlikely that having a mission statement has changed anything for the church. And today, it's hard to find anyone who can recite it from memory.
And I agree with both of those statements. Here's the reason I agree with those statements, because I've seen small churches bring in the expert to basically come in and give them a cute catchphrase.
Yep.
But they didn't know the church. They didn't know who they were. They just told you what you were going to be, and they made it sound cute. You might have even put a poster up somewhere. But no, and again, I've seen big churches and mid-sized churches do this too. But the reality is, most small churches don't, because they think they know what it is. But can you really internalize it in such a way that everyone in your church understands it, and you can all be okay with that? So that's such a key component. But so many times when I've seen a smaller church, the only reason they have one is because some expert came in to said you need one of these. That part's true.
Yep.
But where it becomes a problem is when the expert also told them what it was.
Exactly.
We found this even for our church not too long ago, where we brought in a consultant to help us with one particular issue, and they came in and we said, we want to be this, but that consultant was very geared toward one particular type of church. Yeah, but don't you want to do? It's like, no, we just told you what we want to do.
Yep.
You asked us the question, we gave you the answer because we knew it. We gave you the answer, and you wanted to turn us into what you wanted us to be. We don't want to be that.
Yeah.
So we finally, kind of said, hey, thank you so much. And we finished up the time with that person. And then we took some good stuff from them, but then we went and we built who we were and who we're wired to be. We're not wired to be the next big mega church. That's just not how our wiring is set up. But we know who we're geared toward, and we'll deal with that later on, and how we're going to move those people closer to Jesus. That's so key. So even if you're a small church, absolutely, you need one of these.
Yes.
You need to, the small church preacher needs to be putting this in front of their church all the time, as any church preacher does, putting this in front of them, reminding people who they are and reminding them what that calls them to be and who that calls them to become and what that calls them to do. That should be there all the time. It's important to have someone outside to help with that, as we've talked about that. But once that's there, you go at it over and over and over again, because it's yours, not ours.
Yeah. So this is what fuels what we do at Seats to Streets. Again, let's go back to our missions. We help churches create committed, growing disciple makers. We are not church experts. We are not the heroes. And you will hear on every consultation and coaching call or presentation at your church, we are not the hero, because we are not. You're the hero. You know your people. You know your culture. You know your identity. You know what you have your mission. We just help you bring clarity to it, to yours. It may not be the mission that we want to be a part of, and it may not be the identity that we would even fit in, but it's yours because God has specifically called you there and gifted you for that. This is why we don't ever want to be called church experts. No, we are the coach on the sideline, encouraging you and yelling that you are the expert into the play. It's funny, Brian, I'll end on this. That Eli started, my oldest son started to play football, and he's in 7th grade. He's now been playing football for 4 weeks. He's also about 5'6", 175 pounds. He's a
He's a big boy.
large boy. I bought him size 11 cleats the other day, and he has not hit the growth spurt like the major, like somewhere in middle school, first to high school, with like 6 inches in the summer.
Like walking around
Hadn't
with
hit it
water
yet.
skis.
Oh, hadn't hit it yet. And I'm watching his game last night, and I realized something. It was a proud dad moment, right? Like, I've played football. I loved it. I mean, I beat myself up in high school football. I didn't want to play in college, but I loved the game. And I'm sitting there watching my kid, and he's only played for 4 weeks. He's made this. He's a starting JV lineman on offense and defense, goes both ways, and he's a second string defensive lineman on varsity. He made it in 4 weeks. He's never put pads on before, but he's laying kids out. His main thing he's got to work on is just conditioning. But here's the crazy part. I'm sitting there watching him in the game. The thing I was most proud of was not when he kept, he got past his defender. It was not when he made a tackle. It wasn't in that. It was when he got knocked down and he got back up. I mean, he just got up because he knew his mission. He knew who he was and knew what his mission was, which is, I'm supposed to go get the ball carrier. This is maybe a little too much information, but he's again not quite there on the conditioning part. He played so much that he tossed his cookies in the game. And
a little pavement pizza. Yep.
Little pavement pizza, calling Ralph on a big white telephone thing, and runs over to the sideline. And I'm like, uh-oh. I'm like, buddy, you okay? And he yeah, grabs some water, hoses off the mouthpiece and his face guard, and says to the coach, can I go back in?
Yeah.
You got it, man. I mean, you got it. He's got it. He understands his mission. So that's what we want to do. And I realized, proud dad moment. I'm like, all right, I'm the coach. He's the expert, and I get to be able to do that with him. And that's what we want to do with your church. So if you want more resources from Seats to Streets, you can check us out online at seatstostreets.com today, because we would love to help you be able to answer those 5 key questions for what it is to be a healthy church. So if you have any questions, check us out, seatstostreets.com. You can fill out the contact form. Love to get in contact with you to be able to help out. So till next time, see you next time.
Later.